it to the steps. Isn't that like absolutely ridiculous given how much my rent is? But I digress. We're gonna go meet Greer at the mall. There's also a Barnes & Noble in the mall, so I'm debating on if I should just get Calabasas there or like go to the indie bookstore and get it. But I've never been to this Barnes & Noble, so I kind of want to go in anyway. Happy Wednesday. So I talked about whether or not I was going to start Seduction Theory with or without the audiobook. I've been itching to read it. I'm halfway through, okay? I started it last night. It's pretty short, so it's only a little over 200 and I read halfway through. The point that I'm at, here's some things we're exploring, okay? Here are characters. We've got Simone and Ethan. They're married professors at Edwards University. Robbie, an advisee of Simone. And then we have Abigail. Abigail works as the department's secretary. Like I've told you guys before, this book starts basically suggesting to you that as the reader, you are going to be reading Roberta's master's thesis called Seduction Theory. But some things that I found interesting so far, this book is looking more at maternal issues and like maternal projections that I feel like Robbie has on to Abigail, and then the lack thereof for Simone. So Simone doesn't have kids and she's like this sex symbol on campus, but also really to Robbie. And Robbie feels like Simone's memoir like brought her to Edwards, brought her to the university, and is a big part of the person that she is. In some power imbalance sort of way, we're seeing Robbie, her love and feelings for Simone through this thesis and exposing Ethan's infidelity. The part that I am kind of dealing with and hoping that the second half of this book resolves for me is the fact that I felt like so far there were a lot of lines just thrown in for the sake of like sounding good. The slander with which he disarmed his concubine. This is one sentence, by the way. After 4 martinis, Simone's mother, who would eventually sue the previous owners of the house for not disclosing the basement's elevated levels of radon, which may or may not have contributed to the lung cancer she didn't know yet was killing her, embraced Simone and whispered, "I like you, but I see through you." I don't think as a reader you should have to work that hard to understand the sentence. And she might have been tempted, had Dr. Shane reminded her, as Ethan did not, of boys with whom she'd grown up, in their brown leather shoes and their father's old shirts. Grammatically correct, maybe. A good sentence, absolutely not. There was also a section in here that I guess kind of showed the writing process for Roberta and her going back and like showing you multiple paragraphs, rewriting things until she felt like she got it right. Initially, that annoyed me. It still might annoy me, honestly, but I also think that adds a nuance to this story, if you will, right? While I do feel like reading the same paragraph in multiple ways was a little bit annoying, I also feel like that helps me as a reader, you as the audience, understand that Roberta is still falling under the category of unreliable narrator, even though this is not like a thriller book. Our narrator was in real time in front of your eyes rewriting things until they happen the way that she wanted them to happen. I'm seeing how you're projecting your maternal issues onto Abigail. You're comparing the relationship between Ethan and Abigail and Ethan and Simone. And again, putting your paternal issues onto Abigail and then finding a way to glorify Simone in your head. I don't know what the second half of this book will entail, right? Will we jump out of the thesis altogether and hear from different characters? Will we get to see Ethan
in a real authentic light. I'm not saying that him or Abigail are good people by any means, but I don't think that it's fair to judge them based off the way that Roberta is writing them, because she's clearly looking at them through a certain lens. Predictions right now at the 50% stage, maybe 4 stars. There's something as far as like the writing style and how a little bit choppy it is that I feel like right now won't allow me to give this 5 stars, but we'll see. I have to go to class, but we'll be back later. We'll probably read more, and hey, who knows, we could maybe finish this today or tomorrow.
She's really starting to lose me now a little bit, and I'm understanding why this has 3 stars. And what type of themes are you trying to portray? This book is attempting to be a little more highbrow, a little more thought-provoking, a little like requiring more effort. But at the same time, if you're going to make me work for something, there has to be something. Okay? I don't want to work for free. I'm looking at all of these different themes, all of these one-liners that are of no significance to the main plot. What am I supposed to do with them? Guilt surrounding motherhood and postpartum. Like a lot of things were briefly touched on going with this motherhood theme. Now we're talking about forgiveness and norms in marriage. I'm really confused. At a certain time, Simone was our hero. Now Simone seems to be transitioning into a villain, and we don't have any sort of reason or explanation why. I'm really hoping that this book in its entirety is not all the thesis. I have to have something outside of Robbie's perspective in order to make this make any sense, and I don't even know that we're gonna get that. Thoughts right now. At my last update, I was predicting 4 stars. Currently at this stage, I'm predicting 3. Another thing, I don't think that Ethan, his character arc should end with you convincing me that he's a good person. You ran him through the mud. You made me think that soft launching infidelity is okay. You made me think that Ethan was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he did wrong things. And now that he's doing the right thing, and now that Simone is in a position where I'm like, Miss Girl, I don't like this. Now you're making me hate him. I don't know if that was an author choice. Ethan does not get to be the hero here. I won't allow it. This just feels good. This just sounds good. Even reading this paragraph, I'm like feeling like her and feeling upset of, wow, someone knew everything about me. I consider them to be my best friend. I love them. And I don't want to share my best friend, someone that I love, with the department secretary. Like walking through the reasons why she chose to be friends with Ethan first, why she chose to marry him, why she thought she had someone who is gonna be faithful to her, right? And then he just doesn't. I'm in love with the idea of this book, not what's actually on the paper. That feels problematic. I'm forgetting about the role Robbie plays in this. So she basically said that for that last section where I was really pro Simone, that Simone had to forget Robbie was a thing, and that she was teetering on and crossing inappropriate lines with Robbie. Even though she didn't sleep with, do what Ethan did, Simone's not in the right either. So she's about to, or seemingly trying to convince us that because she didn't have physical sex, even though this is the person that stood naked in front of her student, she's going to attempt to convince us that Ethan is more wrong than she is, and that she can just pretend that Robbie didn't exist. Getting a little dark. Don't strain your eyes, turn on the light. If there's one thing I know for sure, Robbie's a weirdo and she should be locked up. I'm not gonna say Ethan is a good or bad person, but Ethan's a cheater. I don't know anything about Simone because I feel like Robbie has just talked her up. I guess Abigail was used as a vehicle to bring the cheating along, and now she doesn't mean anything. All the pieces are falling into play so well. I have less than 100 pages left. I can't read all this today because I'm simply overwhelmed by the turn that this is taking. Just finished the read. I feel like it's clever. I want to be able to go back and say, this wasn't how I was supposed to feel, but the ending showed me that that's exactly how I was supposed to feel, and I just don't think that I want to feel that way, so I can't say it was a good ending. The part where we left off, I think I was talking about how now this story actually feels real, and Simone as a character feels relatable, and why wasn't the story being written like this the whole time? I also noted like the complexity of the language that almost felt needless, and hit on the topic of Robbie still being an unreliable narrator, but still being the narrator, and Ethan reminding the reader to remember like who narrates the story tells the story. Yes, that's where we've come from, okay? Also, up to that point, we threw out so many different themes. We hated on Abigail. We loved Simone. We villainized, victimized, worshiped Simone. We also did the same thing for Ethan. I'm getting upset at all those things, right? And then right when I start to say, you know what? We really gotta see that this is not the story anymore, and we have to see that this is from like what's going on in Roberta's life. We do get that. We're reminded that Roberta is writing this thesis. She has slowly given chapters to Simone, who is still her advisor. She's conveniently sent it to Abigail, the secretary who cheated with Simone's husband Ethan, and now Abigail has read it. Abigail has told her, hey, you should really probably let Joyce, the department chair, in on this action so we can have some type of Title IX, because this is inappropriate, right? So everything is falling correctly into place for Roberta, and I almost still don't even know if any of this is true, but the last couple of pages wraps up with still her showing you that she's writing and rewriting these scenes. So like I said, you don't know what is and what isn't. So as we start to get to the end, you see a lot of different characters like explaining things that you as a reader may have thought throughout the book. Abby is telling her again conveniently when they're meeting up and she's sharing this advice with her. The thing is, the relationship in my book isn't supposed to be black and white. It's supposed to be ambiguous, whether the professor really did anything wrong. The point is, it's hard to define what constitutes romance or betrayal. So I do kind of like that she tied that theme together, because I was wondering what the betrayal actually was. I know it wasn't like, it couldn't have been the cheating because that just happened so fast. At this stage, with about 40 pages left, we're literally still wondering what's in it for Abigail. And she even says, what did Abigail want? Like justice for single moms. I never got a good read on her, and I've been saying the whole time, like, who is Abigail, right? So it felt a little good to see part of what I was feeling about Simone in that chapter. Again, these characters were voicing it when they were having their long table and saying the characters felt so real this time, and the conflict, it felt complex, and how do we separate our intellectual truth from our emotional truths. And is monogamy a social construct, right? With Ethan saying to us that he was gonna soft launch his infidelity, and just feeling like the manuscript really took shape. So that's also the point where I was reading as well. But then again, very almost conveniently, and maybe that is just part of it, because this is a book like the prequel, but also the notes and the drafts, I guess, of this novel that Roberta wants us to think that she's published. But again, super conveniently, she runs, or Ethan hits her with his car, and she asked him right then and there to be on her thesis committee. And now on her committee is Simone, her advisor, Ethan, Simone's husband, and Joyce, the chair. So she gets up there and she also invites Abby, the secretary, because everyone should be there, right? She reads it, and then somehow in the last 2 pages, Abby's dad dies and she gets married to her ex-stepbrother. And then Ethan tells Robbie, hey, here's my agent's number, because that would happen. Hey, here's my agent's number. He already wants to buy the book. Congratulations. And it's just implied that Robbie is a best-selling author. That's ridiculous. Simone felt like there were elements of Freud sprinkled throughout here, and I did say early on, like, Freud would have loved this. So big brain girl here, big brain girl. This was honestly an infuriating experience. And I do see why people are giving it 3 stars, because it does kind of make you as the reader doubt yourself in a way that I haven't seen before with this type of storytelling. But at the same time, that doesn't excuse the fact that you did it. So there's, again, on the last 2 pages, when we're just saying everything, on the literal last 2 pages of the book, Robbie is saying that in her course memory as narrative, Simone taught us to abandon our protagonist, ourselves, at the height of their emotions. Allow the narrator's eye to wander towards the window. Remark on a passing ice cream truck. It was useless to describe hearts pounding and sobs ricocheting. Only in the absence of such description can the reader yield to the inevitable and, yes, begin to sob on their own. Okay, these things make sense, and I respect this. But to me, it just feels like a cheap ending to throw all of the critiques that you knew that might come from this book if you didn't have them somewhere in it. It's a weird way to think about it, to where I can't give it more than 3 stars, but also anything less than 3 would just be not nice, because there were good parts of this novel, and I do think I can still appreciate the idea and the attempt, maybe even a little bit of the execution. You want something to bring you back to it again, to make it stand out. I think that's what's getting me too. Usually when your narrator is unreliable, and I think we saw throughout the book that Robbie is still very much an unreliable narrator, what makes that so good is when you get to the end and it's like, oh, I wasn't right. No, you were reliable to me. I believed you. I never believed Robbie once. I felt like everything that was said at the end, all of the reveals, I knew the whole time. So written to be this sort of deceptive character, and then you find out these things at the end, that she did write over infidelity and just make it bland, that the characters were over sexualized, and that this type of thing wouldn't happen in real life. Abigail had no purpose other than to move along the plot and just exist for Ethan to have sex with. You're telling me things at the end of the book that I already know. So at the point where I was like, I really want this to be done, it was kind of just like, okay, well, now I will conveniently reveal, not even a reveal, but I will conveniently give these truths to you,
and everybody gets a happy ending. Literally everybody gets a happy ending. You get a book deal, and I don't know if Ethan, and I shouldn't have to speculate this much, but maybe Ethan gave her his agent to stop her from potentially going with Title IX or whatever. But that's not how this ended. That's how the first version that Robbie showed us ended. How the real version ended was with Joyce not reading her thesis fully, like she said, so not even knowing that Joyce herself was in it. Simone giving her just a little bit of a nudge to say, you know, less is more. Like, just a little bit of critique. And Ethan giving her a book deal. Abigail getting married. And everyone being happy. I'm not happy. Who gets to account for that? I think even if things happen in a book that you don't like, for some reason at the end, to be a good book, you know why that happened. Everything in this book happened that I didn't like, and then to find out not only was I feeling like I couldn't comprehend, I comprehended everything exactly the way that I was supposed to comprehend it. And it wasn't good still. I'm just gonna end there because I'm probably saying the same thing over and over again in different ways. I think I was just so excited for this read. I know I was. I know I was. We know that I was so excited for this book and the idea of it. The amount of like dissonance I feel right now is insane. I want it to be done. Hope you guys enjoyed this reading vlog type style video. Make sure that you're following me on Instagram, TikTok, Goodreads to see these updates when I'm actually posting them. I'm gonna read something else, and let's not bring this up again until the end of September.